For today's vignette, I want to take a look at the very dramatic episode of Abdu'l-Bahá's declaration of his station as the center of his father's covenant, which he made for the first time to the Baha'is of the West in New York City in 1912. So, one of the very first American Baha'is was an artist called Juliet Thompson, and when Abdu'l-Bahá came to New York, Juliet Thompson requested his permission to paint his portrait. And Abdu'l-Bahá accepted her request, and in response he requested of her that if she were to paint his portrait, that she paint his servitude to God. This was his request. And so over the course of a number of weeks, in a number of different places around New York City, Abdu'l-Bahá sat for Juliet Thompson as she tried as best she could to paint his servitude to God. But on the fourth of these sittings, something outstanding occurred. So, at the time when Abdu'l-Bahá came to America, this was very early days, and most of the Baha'is in the West were still trying to get an understanding of what exactly the Baha'i teachings were, and most pertinently, what exactly was the position of Abdu'l-Bahá as the son and successor of the founder of their faith. Was he a prophet? Was he not a prophet? Was he something else entirely? Why did people refer to him as the mystery of God? What did that mean? What exactly was the station of Abdu'l-Bahá? Well, that fourth sitting, which took place on June 19th, 1912, began just as the previous sittings had begun. Abdu'l-Bahá arrived, took a seat and got himself into position for Juliet to begin painting. But for some reason, Juliet couldn't bring herself to begin. There was something going on with Abdu'l-Bahá that day that just transfixed her, and she simply couldn't set her brush to the canvas. And she describes in her diary, standing there by her canvas, looking at Abdu'l-Bahá, she says, "What I saw then was too sacred, too formidable. He sat still as a statue, his eyes closed, infinite peace on that chiseled face, a godlike calm and grandeur in his erect head." Now that day, another of the early American Baha'is, Lua Getzinger, was also present at the sitting with Juliet. And Lua also recognized this overpowering majesty and serenity that was emanating from Abdu'l-Bahá. And Juliet continues in her diary. She says, "Suddenly, with a great flash like lightning, he opened his eyes, and the room seemed to rock like a ship in a storm with the power released. The Master was blazing. The veils of glory, the 1,000 veils, had shriveled away in that flame, and we were exposed to the glory itself. Lua and I sat shaking and sobbing. Then he spoke to Lua. I caught the words in Persian, Munadi Ahad, herald of the covenant. Lua started forward, her hand to her breast. Man? I? She exclaimed. Abdu'l-Bahá said to her, "Call one of the Persians. You must understand this." Never shall I forget that moment. The flashing eyes of Abdu'l-Bahá, the reverberations of his voice, the power that still rocked the room. God of lightning and thunder, I thought. He then said to Lua, I appoint you, Lua, the herald of the covenant, and I am the covenant appointed by Baha'u'llah, and no one can refute his word. This is the testament of Baha'u'llah. You will find it in the holy book of Aqdas. Go forth and proclaim, this is the covenant of God in your midst. A great joy had lifted Lua up. Her eyes were full of light. She looked like a winged angel. Oh, recreate me, she cried, that I may do this work for thee. By now I was sobbing uncontrollably. Julie too wants to be recreated, said Lua, not even in such a moment forgetful of me. But the Master had shrouded himself with his veils again, the 1,000 veils. He sat before us now in his dear humanity, very, very human, very simple. "Don't cry, Juliet," he said. "This is no time for tears. Through tears you cannot see to paint." I tried hard to hold back my tears and to work, but painting that day was at an end for me. The Master smiled lovingly. "Juliet is one of my favorites," he said, "because she speaks the truth to me. See how I love the truth, Juliet. You spoke one word of truth to me, and see how I have praised it." I looked up to smile in answer and in gratitude, then was overwhelmed again by that awful, convulsive sobbing. At this, the Master began to laugh, and as he laughed and laughed, the strangest thing happened. It was as if at each outburst he wrapped himself in more veils, so that now he looked completely human, without a trace left of his superhuman majesty. Never had I seen him like this before, and I never did afterward. Hi there, I'm doing these short videos throughout 2021 in honor of the centenary of the passing of Abdu'l-Bahá, whose writings are the basis of my new album, Home of Light, which is coming out one song at a time throughout the year. All these short stories come from this book, Vignettes from the Life of Abdu'l-Bahá by Annamarie Honnold, and I hope these little anecdotes give us some glimpses into Abdu'l-Bahā's life during this special year. Also, if you'd like a copy of the album, since Home of Light has been made through the support of so many friends around the world, I've decided to give it away as a gift on behalf of everybody who helped to make it. So if you'd like to receive the album, you can sign up at my website, lukeslott.com. It's linked in the description below. And in November, prior to the centenary itself, you'll receive the album as a gift in celebration of Abdu'l-Bahā's life. So I appreciate if you hit the like and subscribe buttons, and if you'd like to hear the story behind the album, you can check out my podcast, A Story of Light, also linked in the description below.